So I have a question about in your printout, you talk about Peter being martyred in Rome and about how Saint Clement of Rome talks about that. And I just find that interesting because there is another view in some Protestant circles that Peter may never have gone to Rome. You mentioned about 1 Peter 5:13 about Babylon being a code word for Rome, which
Yeah.
I personally do believe, but there is another view that exists that Peter was literally in Iraq and Peter never went to Rome. And usually that is a way to undermine the Catholic position, like to completely remove Peter from a Roman context. And what's your opinion of that?
Well, I haven't read the entire, this letter to the Corinthians from St. Clement of Rome. And I don't know that he's saying he was in Rome. St. Clement of Rome could have been speaking of something that happened in another place other than Rome. I don't think this particular excerpt certainly isn't, as I read it, isn't saying it occurred in Rome. So it could have occurred in another place, Iraq or wherever. The important point is that he was constantly proclaiming Jesus and constantly getting beaten for it to the point of death. And when he says to these men, and then there's a bracket at Peter and Paul's who he's referring to, as I understand it, Paul and Peter had separate ministries. So the fact that they both suffered in the same way doesn't mean they suffered together. So
I think most of history has Peter getting crucified upside down first, and then Paul being beheaded on the Appian Way, right?
and by Nero, as opposed to, I don't know who went after Peter. I don't know that.
Yeah.
And just so you're aware, that whole discussion, that also gets into Bible prophecy questions too, because if Babylon is a code word, like if it can be a code word for Rome, then Babylon can mean other places other than Iraq. If it's not a code word for Rome, then Babylon must always be literal Iraq. And so that's a discussion as well.
Yeah, they use code words to define Rome, you know, the city of 7 hills in Revelation, they talk about it that way. So there are times when they don't just come right out and say it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I believe too. But.
Well, there's a lot of people that are taking specific prophecy positions, and I don't know that we should be doing that. I think this is getting into one of these areas of what hill are we going to fight and die on, you know, and you know, the thing I'm going to fight and die on is these guys were tortured because all they wanted to do was talk about what happened in fact. Okay, yes, they wanted to make disciples, yes, they proclaimed his teachings, but the fact of the matter is, and the important point is, they all went to their death saying he rose from the dead.